Hello, welcome to Nicole, and Phil with Purpose.
Hello.
So, we're going to start with a question for you today. Have you ever known anybody that's actually flipped and switched houses? Anybody?
I do. Yes.
Me too. So Nicole and I know that very personally now, because Nicole and her husband Matt and my wife Missy and we just switched houses since our last time, this past weekend, since our last episode. And it's been quite the whirlwind.
Literally 2 blocks apart from each other.
Yeah.
And we basically did a merry-go-round. You move in, I move out, right? So we have been through a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks of packing and moving, and I think we're still getting settled.
Yes.
But yeah.
Flipping houses to a whole new level. So, but
Absolutely.
that's not what we're necessarily going to talk about today, but yet we're going to bring that in today because we really haven't had, that's been our focus. That has been our focus for the last week. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that brings us.
Me too. If you could look at my shoes right now, I do have matching shoes on because I had to go buy new ones. I could not find 2 matching shoes. So
and I got stuck on the roof today for 25 minutes. Get to know the different. I did end up getting off. The Lord provided. Praise the Lord. He got me off that roof, and I give him all the glory for it. But
you're saying I came close to having to do today's episode by myself
almost.
today,
Well, that's
wondering where Phil was.
I didn't have my phone on me, and so you would have had no idea where is Phil. Anyway, the Lord, like I said, provided and made a way.
Absolutely.
So we're glad that you're here today, and we get to enjoy this time together. So today we're going to talk about that, like I said, but we also want to talk about gratitude and gratitude even in changing circumstances like this, life altering. I don't know about life altering, but in betweens, as we're calling it today.
Absolutely.
In betweens.
Interestingly, we had planned to talk about gratitude just coming off the heels of Thanksgiving. And Phil and I apart, kind of came to like an aha, like, what about gratitude in this in-between time that we find ourselves in, where we're feeling a little unsettled, feeling big changes that have happened, adjusting. And, at first we were like, well, do we do gratitude and then we were like, well, actually, these 2 things fit well together. So we're looking forward to exploring those ideas today.
Yes, absolutely. So for us, as we're talking about, we are in an in-between space. Our family, and Nicole will speak to it too, but our family we're just I don't know if in-between is the right word exactly, descriptor, but it's a new space for us. It's a new environment that we just we're unfamiliar with, and so that can throw you off kilter a little bit, make you a little out of sorts. Like my preparation time for today, just going to be honest with you, was minimal. Just because, we have so much going on still to move in and all that. But yeah, so.
Yeah, that term in between is an interesting one. It actually comes from a book written by Pastor Jeff Mannion called The Land Between. And so that whole term of in between just really kind of brings to light the fact that some seasons in life we feel really settled. We feel like we've got this. We're in routines
in a groove
that feel normal. And then there are times where we feel like we've kind of fallen into this place where everything seems foreign, where everything we thought was normal may be gone or maybe not as clear as it once was. So, the in-between, that can come in a lot of different ways. It can, think about not just moving from a long-term home into a temporary home or a new home, but think about job changes, right? Whether you are anticipating getting a new job, whether things at work are stressful, so you're feeling like, maybe there's going to be some changes, or whether, you have chosen to seek other vocational opportunities. Think about a divorce or the end of a relationship where maybe you've been married for a long time and all of a sudden now you're alone, or you're just not with that spouse anymore, or you've been dating for a long time and now all of a sudden that person is no longer there in your life. Or think about empty nesters. The kids are gone, Maybe the spouses have now looked at each other and said, "What is this family life going to look like? What is this? We've come out of this time of raising kids for 20 years, and now they're gone, pursuing their own things, and certainly still part of your family. But now, what does their
Hmm.
day to day look like?" Or maybe it's you're a college student and you've moved away from home and you're trying to settle into a new way to be, whether it's at college or whether you've moved into a first apartment. So there's lots of different in between spaces in our lives that can really throw us off and make us really question, like, what's happening to my life right now?
I'll add a couple, or one in particular. Just a guy that I work with is becoming a friend of mine. Was just telling me this week that at 14 years old, his dad died. His father
Absolutely.
died. I mean, that's a huge, obviously, life event that's going to make you feel in between, right?
Absolutely.
It's going to make you feel out of sorts. And then his brother, committed suicide 10 years later, and in that ballpark somewhere, and I think it was 8 years later, but 6 years later. And so it's just one of those, and they had no idea. They had absolutely zero idea. So it's another one of those in between. So how do you handle those things? How do you live through that with still living with a purpose and still living with meaning and with direction?
Yeah, the in between can feel so unsettling and difficult. And waiting is never easy, right? Waiting, we want clarity. We want to know right now what this next season is going to look like. But we don't have to go too far in life or be too experienced to know that that is just not how life is. There are times where we just fall into these patterns of waiting and wondering and wanting clarity. And sometimes we joke we want the crystal ball to know
Hmm.
what that next piece is going to look like. And what we're going to talk about today, though, is that that can actually be such a fruitful period of developing and learning and really zeroing in on the fact that our purpose, the trajectory, the vocation, whatever you want to talk about, our calling, doesn't change during those times of waiting. In fact, oftentimes if we lean in, we that period can be a great time of clarification, even in the waiting, even when we feel out of sorts or when we feel directionless. We can still know that this direction, this purpose that God has created us for and called us to, is still very much what is driving us.
Yeah, so I'm going to show up on the screen. If you're listening on the radio, you can't watch. You'll just have to listen, obviously. But if you can watch, we have a sweet spot that we're talking about. That's one of our visuals for Nicole and Phil with Purpose. And where you live, when even in these in between times, does not change, or it actually will probably inform finding your sweet spot, but it
Absolutely.
still doesn't change who we are. Same with the circle of congruence. It our which is a state of contentment and harmony resulting from a focus of our time, our energy, and our resources for God's given glory,
I think
purpose, and glory.
I think of the sweet spot piece makes me think about my husband, who was in education for many years, coaching and teaching and administrating.
Hmm.
And when he first retired, there was this sense of in between, like what now? And so obviously when you're in education, you are doing a lot of teaching and mentoring and guiding and being a role model for young people. And it's interesting that that calling for him to that work of mentoring, especially young men, has not changed. The place that he does it and the way that he does it
Hmm.
in the work that he's doing now is different. But that purpose, that calling to mentor and pour into young people has remained consistent. So even through that period of waiting and wondering and thinking, well, maybe my time mentoring young people is done. Um, yes, the setting has changed. Yes, the day to day what he's doing has changed, but that purpose, that calling, is still very much an active part of what he does.
Absolutely, and I went through that as well. The last year and a half in education for 20 years myself, and now God has me in a different place and doing the same sorts of work with people, but looks different. So, and then as far as the circle of congruence, we talked about that. Again, this is another visual for Nicole and Phil with Purpose to help us find our congruence in life. We won't dive into that deeply today. And then our strategy, like Nicole, how does living in an in-between time, how does that impact our strategy?
Whoa, that's a good question. Sometimes I think part of just thriving during an in-between time is recognizing that it's okay to have a few moments where you are thinking strategy. What do you mean? I'm just trying to find my shoes, right? But maybe an answer to your question is that maybe during those times you need to be even more intentional about strategically using your time, and maybe even revisiting if you've used our tools here to map out your strategy and to think about, okay, if I'm committed to mentoring young people or sharing my faith, honoring Jesus Christ, recognizing that might look different in this in-between time, and maybe even giving yourself more grace that, okay, it's okay to take some time to just be and adjust, but intentionally refocusing, I think, can help us kind of deal with the ambiguity. Human beings don't like ambiguity. We don't like lack of clarity. And this can actually be a grounding, a rooting, especially if we have it in writing right in front of us and posted maybe on our refrigerator. I think, revisiting that strategy and revisiting our purpose and our sweet spot and all of these tools can really help us to persist through a time that can be very difficult.
And I think that draws attention to our strategies are flexible. It's a living, breathing,
Absolutely.
flexible document or, way. I mean, just for those of you that may be new to Nicole and Phil with Purpose, our strategy is our battle plan for living our life. It's us setting goals and then action steps to reach those goals. And these goals are based on our purpose in living. What is our motive in living? It's based on our purpose in living. What is our motive in life? Well, like for me, it's to glorify the name of Jesus because I love Jesus, so I want to glorify His name. So I set these goals in my life with these action steps to do that, to hopefully glorify His name. Now the thing is now that I live in a different house, some of these will stay the same. Some of them may change. They may adjust. Like for example, one is I think I'm blocking it, right? Right here, work in my new house. There's some things that need to be done in the new house. There's odds and ends. And so that's a goal of mine is to, fix those things or to adjust those things to fit us. And so those are the action steps to get there. That's not, that's going to change because I moved into a new home. That wouldn't have been a goal before, right? Other than, you fix things when, when things break, but yeah, Nicole and Phil with Purpose doesn't change that we're doing this just because I live in a different home. So, and it's going to be, again, flexible. It's going to be, moving. Some of these things are 1 month goals, 1 week goals. Some are 5-year goals. If you're looking to get a degree and you feel like you want to go in a certain direction, you want to be a journalist or whatever it is, well, you got to get an education. So, your goal in there would be, get a journalism degree or whatever that is for you.
Yeah, I would just I want to reiterate again that, so many times we go through life and we don't have a strategy intentionally written down anywhere. We don't have it. I mean, we might say, yeah, I live with purpose, but it's at these times of in-betweenness that having it written down, revisiting it regularly, being able to see it in front of us and being able to just see that, okay, if I have to maybe I am pursuing that degree, but I have to take some time off for, kids or whatever the reason is, but knowing that my direction hasn't changed. The circumstance that I have to flex a little bit to what my current circumstances are, whatever that is, but that this is still, in front of me. And to make those goals visual and to make them strategic and to make them a part of your everyday, maybe not every day, maybe you don't revisit this every day. I would think it's helpful to revisit every day, but Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's weekly, whatever it is for you. But the intentionality of that can give us a little bit more comfort to just help us persist through those times that feel really awkward and maybe directionless.
Yep, and that's where we go to. That's what this whole. If you think about, if you ask the question, what is Nicole and Phil with Purpose all about? Well, it's all about there's people that are struggling with direction in life, finding the direction in life, and that's what we want to help in finding a purpose, and we want to help provide these visuals and draw attention to these things, like with this podcast, for example, and our website, very intentionally. So, what's next here, Nicole?
I want to talk a little bit about gratitude.
Yes.
Because we had said, okay, we're just coming off a time of Thanksgiving. And obviously, many of us pause during the week of Thanksgiving or the day of Thanksgiving to express gratitude. But we might not always look at gratitude as part of our strategy. And I think we want to maybe step back and look at gratitude as a guiding principle in our lives. So my part of this move is that we have moved out of a home that we loved, and we've, sold it to Phil and Missy, who will love the house as well and carry on right where we, left off with their family. We moved into a rental house, and it feels very non-permanent. It feels, it's much smaller. There are things about it that we really enjoy. There's a big bathtub. I love that. But
it's temporary.
But it's temporary. And so, just to be honest, when we were sitting there the night of kind of the final move, my husband and I and my 2 college-age kids were looking at each other going, kind of, what have we done? It didn't feel like home. It felt like, we didn't have a home. And so, we started talking as a family, like, okay, sometimes when we have goals and directions in mind, there are these in-between times that may not feel like we're making the progress we want to make. It may feel foreign. It may not feel comfortable or homey. But with our trajectory in mind, our purpose in mind, it helps us to get through that, because we can say, you know what, God provided a beautiful home for us in between. It's clean. It has ample bedrooms for us. It's convenient to the expressway. All of these things. We didn't have to, spend hours and hours searching for someplace to live.
If you want to see anybody at any time, you can. I mean, it's right in town.
That's right.
Just so you know, our audience, where they moved to is like I said, where we lived, and it's right in this basically the center of New Era, right on the Christian school property, and it's a nice, great setting. I really loved living there.
But it is the center of town. Right?
Yeah, everybody knows what you're doing.
But where gratitude comes in is, in any circumstance, we can choose to either see the deficit of what we're living, or we can choose to look and see where God has provided. And, our family talked a lot about delayed gratification, right? In my field of psychology, there was this research you might have heard of, the marshmallow test, where kids were given a marshmallow, and they were told, okay, you can either eat that marshmallow, or if you wait and don't eat it, I'll give you 2 more in 10 minutes. And of course, some of the kids, looking at it, and they ate that one. And other kids were able to delay gratification, and they got the reward for waiting and got 2 more. And so I think gratitude comes into play in just, you probably heard the phrase, gratitude makes what we have more than enough. And sometimes we take for granted the ways that God provides for our needs. I think of the Israelites and the manna that God provided when they were going through the wilderness. And, the manna basically was enough for the day, right? And some of the Israelites got anxious about whether God was actually providing enough for them, so they would, gobble up and store up more than they needed for the day. And they found that when they did that, it went stale or got maggots, and they didn't trust God. So God was providing their needs, but they were, many of them, ungrateful.
And then they get tired eating the same thing over and over
Yeah,
again.
right. Complaining about having to eat this again and again, and gratitude would have said, you know what, God is providing for our needs. He is giving us sustenance that we need to go through this period. And I don't know about you, but 40 years in the wilderness was probably a pretty good in between time, right? Can you imagine wandering aimlessly, not knowing whether we were ever going to make the promised land for 40 years? I often have put myself in that shoes, and I probably would have been one of the head grumblers, right? Like, are we ever going to get there? But God says, I am enough for you. He is enough for us. He will provide for us. Do you not see that he provides for the birds of the air, and how much more does he love us? And so I think a lot of spiritual muscle is built during times of in between. You can choose to lean in and learn what God is teaching you, or you can choose to be really miserable. And so that I see that. How would you say gratitude fits in with kind of the in between? Do you have other thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, you hit on it pretty well. But I mean, it's definitely it's something you got to be conscious about, though. You got to be what's the word I'm looking for? Deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do intentional. That's the word I was looking for. You got to be intentional about it, or else I will, and you probably can relate. Get to the point of complaining and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And actually, I mean, even this week, I get frustrated different times because the house wasn't set up or I couldn't find something, and I kind of took it out on my kids and my wife a little bit, and I had to. I'm reminding myself right now, Phil, be thankful, and even this week, during prayer times and stuff like that, I'd sit down and reflect on the blessings, a beautiful home. And so, yeah.
In my field, working in the university and just doing a lot of reading of research, and always needing to teach my students about, what's happening in the research world. I always say I love it when empirical research bears out the truth of God's word. And so what we see in those who research gratitude is that gratitude not only changes us cognitively and changes, how we see the world, but gratitude also has amazing physical benefits. It reduces blood pressure. It reduces stress levels, stress hormones. It reduces our susceptibility to disease. It improves our mental health. It is a protective factor against depression and anxiety. And I just think that is amazing, right? That God, he says, I will give you everything you need. And he put us on this earth to be the light and salt to others who need to know about him and his hope and his gospel. And he designed our bodies such that when we live in gratitude, we reap the benefits of that, not just our minds, but our bodies and our souls and our hearts. And obviously we also are able to model well to other people what it is to be grateful regardless of our circumstances.
Yep, that's right. All right, going into next week, anything more for today?
I don't think so.
All right, going into next, 2 weeks from tonight, that will be our final episode for this season. We're going to be looking at and reflecting and reviewing and seeing what season 2 brings for us. Remember, really what we're hoping to do here with Nicole and Phil with Purpose is obviously to help people live with direction and purpose in life. But with the podcast piece, we really, our end game is not just to have a conversation like this, although I enjoy having this, and I think even some of our listeners have said that they have enjoyed it, and it's been meaningful for them. Really, our goal is to talk with you, and is to talk about your strategy, talk about your circle of congruence, talk about your sweet spot, and just talk about your life. And we don't have to use your name. We can even do it through email. If you want to email us your circumstances, we could read it out loud, the email, and then just kind of talk about our thoughts about what you had to say.
Absolutely. We're coming up on the end of the year. Many people have different strategies that they use at the end of the year to prepare for the next year. Some set resolutions, some choose a word of the year. This might be a tool that's helpful to you as we near the end of 2023. to use the tools that we have to really think about purpose and to think about what does living into purpose look like now and into the future.
And then in 2 weeks, we're going to come back with some ideas of what does this look like moving forward. Even we plan on continuing to do this, but we want to maybe even expand and be more impactful in our community to make the greatest impact we possibly can for the glory of God. So,
and hopefully next time I'll have some shoes that I didn't have to buy new just for this. So
yes, and a little more prep time for me. But I think we did okay today. I think it was
a meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you very much being a part of this. Our subscribers and people that comment are growing every week. And we don't do it for that, but it does help us get the word out. So thank you for helping us get the word out. We really, really appreciate it. So please subscribe, like the video, comment. Just say a little encouraging word if you would. And we're grateful again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.